chapter 6. All right, homework in chapter 6. Yep, this is where the dog tore up a piece of our computer. Well, actually, the microphone on it. And on chapter 6, 3A, all it is doing t-tests. So as I mentioned in the previous chapter, you're going to be doing t-tests like crazy from here on out. Create and test appropriate hypotheses at the 10% level. And there is an additional question here. What seems to be wrong with the estimated coefficient of m? All right. Now, B, you pay attention to this. The most likely cause of a coefficient that is significant in the unexpected direction is omitted variable bias, which if you've watched the video by now, you know what that is. Which of the following variables could possibly be an omitted variable that is causing the coefficient on m unexpected sign? And here is the, up here. Oh, I have to go to the next page, that's what's wrong. Here are your possible choices of omitted variables that could have caused the problem. Okay, now you remember that little matrix I showed you in the video lecture of chapter 6, and it had like omitted variable, expected sign, correlation with included variable, direction of bias. So, what I did was I made a little chart like this with start with omitted variable, and in this homework assignment, the very first thing you would list is B. And the second one you would list would be the F, and then the W, and then the R, and so on, okay? So you list all those out. Then, what would the expected sign of that variable be when you include it in the regression? What would its correlation have likely been with the variable that has the unexpected sign, the one that's included? And therefore, what would the direction of bias be? So you need to fill out a chart like this with BFWR, BFWR, HL. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So that's 6 variables, and then you'll be filling in all this other data off to the right, and then that will be the answer to B. And that is why over here it says 1/4 for each sign in the matrix. That just thought of Neo for a second there. Be sure to show all the possible directions of bias. All that means is, another way of saying that is, draw the chart. That's all it means. Draw the chart. Now, let's see. C, and of course, obviously, fill it in. C is, oh yeah, and if you had to pick one that wasn't listed in part B to add to the equation, what would it be? So I want you to think about another variable that might be important to include. That's pretty much free points there unless you say something real dumb. All right, 5A. This is that financial, this is a financial aid regression, and the first thing you're doing on part A, guess what? Create and test hypotheses for the coefficients, right? So you go over to this equation down here, and do you expect parent to be positive or negative? Do you expect high school rank to be positive or negative? And then test those hypotheses. Then part D, oh yeah, this goes back to the homework from chapters 1 and 2. Carefully explain the real world meaning of the estimated coefficient of male. All right, so remember to be very careful about explaining in the units of measure. And then what would it have looked like had you used 1 for female? And let's see, that was part D. Yeah, okay, so, and you remember that one too from an earlier chapter. We did one just like that, or I didn't do one just like that because I've already got credit for this class. I don't have to do this. 7A. 7A is a regression, goes right back to that iPod regression again. And okay, the first one, A, says use our 4 specification criteria. All right, well, let me show you. I would have gone over that in the video lecture on this, but let me show you that again right here. Really important stuff. There it is. Well, there's an application of it. Okay, on page 166, I'm going to try to hold this other page and not lose it. On page 166, you've got your 4 specification criteria. So it's asking you to use those. And by the way, there's an example of this being employed on page 169. So if you needed to have an example, and on page 168 as well. 168, there's also an example there. So you've got a couple of examples there. So you want to do that same sort of thing on, what did I say, 7a? Yeah. It's asking, do you think percent should be in the regression? Where is A? There it is. To decide whether you think percent belongs in the regression, all right? So go through and use those 4 things. Now, let's see, what have we got next? C. Oh, yeah. It wants you to try to run the regression yourself without percent. Now, back on A, it said, do you think it ought to be in there? And on C, it says, well, let's try it without it. Let's show the results. And so, iPod 3, stay to use your own regression program without percent. All right. And notice this is going to be iPod 3, which means it's going to be Chapter 3 homework, where you're going to find this regression, the regression data. And let's go over here. Chapter 3, Stata, iPod 3, voila. So, and I'm not going to show you this time, because I think you're getting to the point now where you ought to be able to do this. So, run the regression without percent, and then answer the question here in parts at the end of part C. What are the adjusted R-squared figures for the 2 specifications? In other words, the one that was already given and the one that you ran. Were you correct in your determination in part A as to which equation would have the higher adjusted R-squared? And that's it for this chapter, I believe. I'll go back and look. Yeah, that's it for chapter 6. We just did 6, right? I'm getting confused here because I've done now 6 chapters in a row, and I believe we're up to 6. Yeah, that's right. Goodbye.